So I'd like to take you, so it was wonderful to hear the conversation this morning. Resonated a lot with me as we are encountering similar issues, and we'll share some of our solutions to these problems. So obviously, we all know the tremendous toll that Alzheimer's and the related dementias of aging take on individuals, their families, and the tremendous socioeconomic burden that this cluster of diseases pose, if unaddressed, of course, projected to triple the cost of managing this disease. So the call to arms was in 2011 when President Obama signed into law the National Alzheimer's Project Act, and soon after, the first national plan to address Alzheimer's was released. Its first goal, prevent and effectively treat Alzheimer's disease and related dementia by 2025. And as all of you know, in drug development terms, 13 years is the day after tomorrow. So the plan continues to be updated, and as the leading agency for Alzheimer's related dementias, together with our sister institute, NINDS, we were tasked to convene a series of strategic planning research summits. The first one was in 2012. And so our approach to getting at that aspirational goal is that one can say, well, we just need some phase 3 successes, and that's it. But that would not be it. So we knew that we really need to create an entirely new type of research enterprise that can accelerate the discovery and delivery of cures for patients at all stages of disease and individuals at risk of disease, both disease-modifying and symptomatic treatments. So that summit began the series of strategic planning summits on alternating years. The NINDS convenes the Related Dementia Summit, and we also, NIA, convenes the Dementia Care Summit. And these summits, the output of these summits feed into the recommendations from these summits have been used to create that research framework, that blueprint for a translational research agenda, and that NIH uses to develop new funding opportunities, establish public-private partnerships. But these recommendations are not solely for the NIH. They are, in fact, for all players in the R&D ecosystem, as they've been established through the recommendations of all stakeholders participating. So that link, I encourage you to take a look. You will see, hopefully, language there that resonates and may be useful to this community. So armed with that strategy and a plan, equally important and more important was actually that soon after 2012, the NIH budget for AD and related dementias began significantly increasing, thanks to the tremendous tireless work of the public advocates, nonprofit organizations like the Alzheimer's Association and many other public advocacies. So by now, there's now almost six-fold increase in this budget. But again, when funding is not sufficient, you have one problem. When there is a lot of funding, you have thousands of problems. It is not really, just throw money at the wall and see if it sticks. So one of the first collaborations we've had, and now this is it is a public-private partnership, we realized that it will be very important for us as a community of funders to actually understand who is funding what and be able to track collective and individual progress. So we partnered with the association, Alzheimer's Association, and launched in 2012 the International Alzheimer's and now related dementias research portfolio. And it's a knowledge base that aggregates the research portfolios of over 40 funding agencies, federal, non-federal, international. And they're organized around a common research ontology, so you can actually track what's happening, basic research, translational, epidemiology, dementia care, et cetera. And you can track this from 2008 to 2012. We renew it it when we update it every year. So this was an important tool, and again, a public-private partnership that helps not just the funders, but also the community of researchers and patients and their families. So I do want to share with you, of the number of research summits on Alzheimer's disease, there was a set of recommendations that were deemed to be critical and speak to what is needed, key elements that are needed to make transformative change on the research enterprise. And here, not surprisingly, starting with recognizing disease heterogeneity, multifactorial nature, trying to understand not just disease, but equally important healthy aging and resilience, and really being informed on the disease, rooting the discoveries in human data, enabling marriage between computational and experimental approaches, and engaging patients and caregivers and citizens as direct partners in research. I think something that the MS community is true role models for us all. But here on the bottom, there are almost half of these key recommendations speak to the issues of sharing data, biosamples, enabling open science practices across the research continuum, and last but not least, changing the academic publishing and funding incentives to promote collaborative, transparent, and reproducible research. So it is not so much whether you study this gene or that gene, or this is important today and something else tomorrow, but how do we actually organize the research enterprise to learn faster and hand over information, knowledge, and ultimately gather the sufficient wisdom to deliver what's needed to the communities who are afflicted with the disease. So this is, I put here from the most recent, there will be another AD Research Summit 2024, but from the recent summit, because these are themes that were visited here that will be of interest to the MS community. And again, in this bullseye of enablement, open science was really critical, because again, not as a goal in its own end, but as a means to a goal. Because again, we want to have research to be rigorous and reproducible, to be able to translate. We need to enable bidirectional translation. And we need to diversify the translational workforce and diverse participation in clinical research and clinical trials. So, and again, so why is it? It is a pragmatic, really, approach. It's not just a cool word to use. As you can see, despite some very significant advances and FDA approvals, there is limited therapeutic options for individuals afflicted with Alzheimer's. Of course, many more things in the pipeline, but necessitating paints a picture that, again, we are far from meeting the tremendous needs of the community that suffers from these diseases. Also, Alzheimer's is really incredibly complex with multiple etiologies, multiple prodromal phenotypes, progression trajectories. Comes about through a very dynamic interaction between genes and environment over decades to present with various phenotypes of disease, risk and resilience. So we need to accrue an enormous amount of knowledge on the biology. We also, drug candidates continue to fail in the clinic, either for lack of efficacy or unanticipated toxicity. So we do need to, we're tackling all these major factors that contribute to this high attrition. Some of these are, the poor predictive power of animal model, preclinical efficacy studies, lack of translatable biomarkers, but again, bottom line is the complexity of disease and complexity of drug-target interaction. And last, another thing that you guys discussed today is really it is necessary for a disease as big and complex as Alzheimer's or the related dementias to take a precision medicine approach to treatment and prevention, and really be able to understand where individuals are on the disease trajectory and treat the most responsive patient with the right drug at the right time. So for all these reasons, we take a two-pronged approach as we were conceiving our translational program for ADRD. So it has two components. On the top side, so for now some 70 or more than 15 years, we have built a pipeline of translational research funding opportunities. So we provide funding to support every step of this critical path through a variety of initiatives, by either led by NIA or in collaboration with other institutes. But on the bottom, we have been building in the last, particularly in the last decade, although we started this 20 years ago with the Aiding Neuroimaging Initiative, a whole suite of programs, consortia, translational centers that are, their purpose is to enable data-driven and predictive drug development and to produce data resources, research tools, infrastructure to arm those that are taking this treacherous path from target validation to clinical development with what is needed for them to succeed. And so some successes to speak of. So we have a large preclinical drug development portfolio, and over the 15 plus years, we have graduated 18 drug candidates. Now they're into INDs, and now they're in phase 1 and phase 2 clinical trials. And important here is that we're addressing multiple aspects of the disease biology. Several dozens of other candidates are in the wings at different stages of preclinical development. But obviously, for all the reasons that I mentioned before, we know that it is this enabling infrastructure, discovery programs that are really necessary to help the community of drug developers be successful. And so we have this, it's our mantra, it's our reason, open science from targets to trials. So through these programs, we insist we have raised the high bar for expectations for sharing of data, biosamples, insights, all the way through clinical trials, where we expect the sharing of data and biosamples, both from randomization as well as post-treatment, with, of course, tailoring that timeline depending on the type of trial. So the first program that I would like to highlight today is actually a public-private partnership, part of the greater umbrella partnership of Accelerated Medicines Partnerships, managed by the Foundation of the NIH, and this one led by NIA, in partnership with pharma and several nonprofit organizations. So this is a partnership that focused on leveraging the multi-omics revolution and generating data in human samples and bringing the cutting-edge analytical methodology to make predictions on what could be the next generation of candidate targets, conducting experiment, wet lab validation, and releasing all these data resources to the larger community on an accelerated timeline. So this is large-scale cross-disciplinary team science, and Phil Dieger here, one of the leading investigators on one of the teams, who can comment on this experience. But so this was this program is now 9 years old in its second phase, but just over 5 years through this open science research model, what we were able to deliver is this: to establish a centralized data infrastructure for sharing not just the raw data, but process data, analytical results, including the target nominations. A wealth of high-quality multi-omic data, human data, was made available and was widely used on that time scale, both by users in academia, researchers, as well as in the biotech and pharma. Many new mechanistic insights, and over 500 novel candidate targets. All that information was pushed out into the public domain, together with all the supporting evidence and extensive druggability information, which the industry partners contributed. So we transitioned into the second phase 2 years ago, and we made a pivot from focus on just target discovery into targets as well as biomarkers, and we also made a pivot into taking a true precision medicine approach by focusing the second phase of this partnership by bringing now data from diverse populations, with a particular focus on donors from African American and Latin American communities who are disproportionately affected by Alzheimer's disease. And bringing, again, new technologies, longitudinal immunologic profiling, which Phil leads, a lot of single-cell data that is going to enable, is already enabling these teams and the larger community to glean new mechanistic insight, but also to begin, we're already beginning to subtype the disease at the molecular level. So that allowed, so this program, once we established the functioning data infrastructure and launched that first program, this was followed by a series of other linked consortia in the dark blue, where we are taking just the complexity of AD full on, looking at molecular vascular factors, mechanisms of resilience, mechanisms of neuropsychiatric symptoms in AD, gut microbiome. At the same time, we're able to build new translational centers where the output of the Accelerated Medicines partnership now was taken up by the Treat AD centers who are now developing open source research tools to advance these targets into drug discovery and to take some and to launch new drug discovery campaigns. And the Model AD centers who are looking at developing the next generation of mouse models for AD based on the risk factors for sporadic Alzheimer's, and making all these models available without any IP restrictions, without licensing fees, and connecting the characterization of these models to the human data. We also have a very robust drug repurposing and combination therapy development program. All of these are connected through the infrastructure, but we're also connecting them as communities. And all have the emblem of integration across computational and experimental science. So a couple of words on the data infrastructure. It has been incredibly enabling, but the goal there was really to create something that's not a finished product, but that is going to be evolving with the needs and serve a wide community. So the data are being used by international community of researchers, not just researchers in the US. And here, just a testament to this is that 2/3 of the papers published using data resources from the portal are actually by users who did not generate the data. And that is what we think is a testament that this open science research model is working. So what this model also enabled us that non-profit foundations like the Alzheimer's Association now build new funding initiatives using the output of these programs that we have built. And so that is the multiplier effect. They don't need to build models, they don't have to build the infrastructure, it's all there, the data is there. They provide funding now to a new generation of investigators. A couple of words here on this, let's talk about animal models and negative data, the importance of sharing negative data. While on one hand, we're building new models for animal models for AD research, on the other hand, we realized that there is a bigger problem out there, the problem of reproducibility and rigor. So we developed the Alzheimer's disease preclinical efficacy database, where we curate very deliberately and, manuscripts that test candidate therapeutics in animal models, and it's searchable along many facets. But it also provides a platform where researchers can create citable preprints, including preprints of studies that have negative findings and they have trouble publishing these. Well, also, this is a tool that provides funding agencies with a way to enforce requirements for transparent reporting and rigorous study design. And just to share with you, so this is for every paper gets the rigor report card. We ask the question, has the following been reported in this study? So these are 24 experimental design elements that are established through expert advisory committees as key. And you can see now out of close to 1,200 papers, the critical elements of the experimental design are really underreported. In red are actually 9 essential elements of study design, such as inclusion criteria, power calculation, etc. So the fault is not in the animals, because the animal studies are not predictive. What do you do with lack of rigor? That simply needs to change. So here is, of course, we've followed the trends. Has rigor improved over time in 5-year increments? And you can see here on these 9 critical elements, there is some movement in the right direction. A long way to go, but I do want to point you to these 2, conflict of interest and sex as a biological variable, where there is the most improvement. And those are aspects for which NIH has issued policies and requirements to report something. So policy does matter. And imagine if now funders unite and we all expect, raise our expectations for funded investigators. And we have united with several, again, ALZHEIME'S is a partnership with several funding agencies working in the ADRD space and beyond. And again, I urge you to take a look at it. You can register for a free account. If you're a researcher, you can, of course, see everything without registering. But, and do contact us. So I will conclude going back to the Accelerating Medicines Partnership. As I said, it is an umbrella partnership. And since 2014, it has launched 10 programs, a powerful program in Parkinson's disease, in addition to Alzheimer's, type 2 diabetes, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, schizophrenia, etc. And it is really leveraged the moment in time and the big data revolution to really redefine these chronic diseases with data. These partnerships are, again, being tremendously impactful in their disease areas, but because of this success, what was apparent is that we have created enormous data assets. So now there is a new program in development that is actually taking a slightly orthogonal approach, saying, well, what if we harness the collective investment in data and these resources and explore, actually take a data-driven approach and look at what is common as well as distinct in the causal biology of chronic diseases through the lens of inflammation. Inflammation was chosen because, again, it cuts across all chronic diseases, whether it's neurodegenerative, neuropsychiatric, cardiometabolic, or autoimmune. So this is a partnership in development that is going to now work towards enabling all these data resources to be conversational or interoperable, to bring new data sets and build predictive models of causal biology across diseases, and if successful, to really create the foundation for a new molecular taxonomy of disease that can complement the one of signs and symptoms.